The name of this next horse is Who Farted, but listen to the call.
Who Farted on the extreme outside. Colorado Co-Ed, Toast a Dozen on the inside. Questers Jet, Who Farted? Who Farted on the outside? It's close. Who Farted in the winner's circle?
¡Claro que sí! ¡Ay, ja, ja! ¡Sí, señor!
Hey pod people, this is another episode of Who Farted. I'm Doc, and in this episode, I get a chance to have a conversation with Robert Peterson. Robert is the host and creator of the Notorious Bakersfield podcast. In that podcast, Robert tells you stories about notorious people and events in Bakersfield's past. If you want any information on the podcast, you can go to notoriousbakersfield.com, where you can get links to his Instagram, to the podcast episodes. You can even get pictures. And if you're cold, get yourself a hoodie. All right, enjoy the show. Yeah, I'm curious about who you are and what you did in your life.
In my prior life?
Yeah, in your prior life before podcasting.
I'm from Bakersfield. I was born here.
Mm-hmm.
When I was 5 years old, my family moved to Tripoli, Libya. And we came back to Bakersfield after a year or two. And then when I was 8 years old, we moved to Dubai, the United Arab Emirates, and we were there for 5 years. And then we moved to Jakarta, Indonesia, and we were there 2 years. And my dad got transferred back to the States. We lived in Louisiana for 2 years when we came back to the States. And then he retired, and we moved back to Bakersfield.
Okay.
And I went to Highland High School the last 2 years of my school, of my high school career. And so anyways, I've lived in Bakersfield pretty much ever since then. I worked in the grocery business for a number of years, sold real estate, worked in a specialty food company that sold food into grocery stores. And I sold real estate during the boom, and I was probably the only realtor that didn't make any money.
Okay. All right. So it just wasn't your thing then, I guess, huh?
No, I didn't really like it. No,
I
didn't.
Okay. Well, why'd you get into it?
I didn't know what it was like.
Okay.
It'd be easy money, and I don't. It takes a certain kind. I'm not a very good salesperson. I don't.
Okay. Yeah, I actually sold cable door to door for. Do you remember Bright House?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I did that, and I just didn't like it. It's hard to sell something if you're not passionate about it.
Yeah, it's not. It's my own personal hang-ups. Like I don't like asking people for money, I guess. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
one of the things you have to do, is ask people for the sell.
Yeah.
And that's when you go in and you close it, and for some reason, that's kind of a hang up of mine, a personal, hang up.
Yeah. Well, and now you have a podcast, and now you have to kind of ask for money, which is kind of hard to do. I'm the same way.
Really?
Yeah.
Not really, because we talked a little bit about the monetizing thing, and I don't, well, yeah, that's a different direction. So.
Yeah. Yeah. But we'll get more into the podcasting part in a little bit here. But so I am curious about your life in Dubai and in the other places, the Middle East. What was that like growing up outside of America.
It gives you a different perspective of different cultures, and uh, it's a whole education in itself. Living outside of the United States, and it gives you a better understanding of what other people, people from other backgrounds go through, and different religions and stuff like that. Oh, it's a whole different type of education, but it's an education in itself. So,
Yeah. Were you homesick at all?
oh yeah, yeah, we always miss Bakersfield, especially my mom. My mom was born and raised in Bakersfield, so Bakersfield, we always knew we were going to come back to
Yeah.
Bakersfield, and we came back every year for vacation. And my dad, um, my parents' house is right by Bakersfield College, so every
Okay.
year we'd come back for the Fourth of July, and we'd watch the fireworks in their front yard of their house. Every Fourth of July, we came back to Bakersfield. So
Okay. Yeah.
that's a thing of the past. The fireworks show at the Bakersfield College.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that it did come back last year. Not
I don't think so.
sure. I thought I saw something about it, but yeah, I don't. Yeah, it's. I think that they stopped doing it. Did they stop doing it during COVID?
No, they
Was it
stopped
before?
doing it back in 2009.
Okay, it must have been
Yeah,
some other fireworks show that I'm thinking of because I think that they have one at like Marketplace and not
oh
Marketplace,
yeah, they're
but
all,
the Riverwalk.
yeah,
Yeah, something
yeah,
like that. But yeah, yeah. There's a lot of things that we just don't do anymore, and it's kind of
yeah,
sad.
yeah,
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that I like about your podcast is like bringing up the history of things, especially in this town.
yeah.
Um, and you being homesick, like, is that why you wanted to start doing the podcast about Bakersfield? Is it because of the
Oh, I don't
just
think
this is
so. I
home
think
or what?
yeah, this is just home. It just feels
Yeah.
comfortable, and a lot of these stories I had heard about in the past, but never really, you know, um, read about. I just heard my family members talking about them and stuff like that. Um, so then when I like go back and read about it, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember when my aunt and uncle talked about this story. So
Yeah.
that's what
I'm
that was kind of the fascination to me.
yeah. See, I'm not from Bakersfield originally. I
Uh,
came from the San Francisco Bay Area,
uh,
and but I have spent the majority of my life here in Bakersfield. So
uh,
a lot of these stories that you talk about, I've never heard of. But
yeah,
really, even if I had grown up here, I probably wouldn't have heard of half of them.
yeah.
Um, but I'm really finding it very fascinating, all the stuff. I mean, how many of
Hmm.
these stories that you've come across, uh, like, have really kind of like, oh, wow, I can't believe that that happened here?
Quite a few.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, like I don't know if you listen to the coroner. Um,
I've listened to them all.
yeah, the coroner story where the coroner investigator got in a fight with the body delivery person
Oh,
or
yeah.
body transportation person, and it's like I remember that kind of. I didn't remember that all that was involved in it, and it's like, oh wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. I'd have to
I,
say,
I
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I had totally forgot that she had committed suicide.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of spoiler alert.
Yeah. Well, I
Oh,
really liked, I think the one that stuck out the most to me was the dust storm.
really? Yeah.
Yeah, I in all of the episodes that you've done, and the majority of them are about, murders and
Uh,
well, murders. But that one stuck out to me the most because it just the amount of like devastation that that wind and dust did to this
yeah.
town is, I find amazing.
Yeah, it's kind of. Were you here then, or
I
were you
was
born?
no. I wasn't. Yeah, I wasn't born yet. No, I was born in '79. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Hmm.
But I do have some friends that are older, and I asked them about it, and they're like, I have no idea. I think they were probably like 3 or 4 and had no idea what was going on. But yeah, that one is the one that I find the most fascinating out of all the stories that you told so far.
Yeah.
So what I did have a question. You said that you were in the grocery business and you were in real estate. Do you
Mm-hmm.
currently have a job or no?
No, I take care of my aunt.
Oh, okay.
She's 95 and a half years old, and she just fell down last Wednesday,
Oh no.
and yeah, a week ago this last Wednesday, and broke her hip for the second time.
Ooh.
And so, anyways, yeah, I take care of my aunt.
Okay.
That's my job. I'm a caregiver.
Okay. Yeah, my parents are taking care of my grandmother. I think she's 95.
Oh
So,
wow.
yeah, same thing. She'll fall and then break a collarbone or something like that, and just like, oh my gosh. Yeah, it's
She did this last year on February 2nd, and broke her left hip, and then just just getting over that really, and then
mm,
she falls down again and does the other hip. So
yeah, well, at least she's
Hmm.
consistent, right?
I
Yeah.
guess this is what we have to look forward to when we're
Yeah, I
in our.
know. I know. Yeah. Um, do you listen to any podcasts at all?
I do.
Okay.
I don't. I'm not big on. Surprisingly, I'm not big on true crime.
Okay.
Uh, I mean, I listen to some true crime, um, but not a lot. But yeah, I listen to several um, several podcasts. I think favorite one um, would have to be probably. I think. Well, I really like what was that like, and it's about people that have gone through extraordinary events, and then
Hmm.
they, just everyday ordinary people that have had stuff happen to them. Like
Yeah.
one person witnessed a murder, one person won a lottery and stuff like that. So it's kind of a fun one. I like Freakonomics. I listen to that.
Yeah.
Um, and I listen to podcasts about podcasting.
Nice. Yeah. I think it makes sense to me that you don't listen to the true crime stuff. I really, even though I know that your podcast probably gets labeled as a true crime podcast, and it makes sense. But I see it more like a history podcast,
Kind of,
and
yeah.
yeah, and I think one thing that you do really well is that you focus on the victims, and
Yeah.
um, you really make sure that people understand that these were alive human beings that their life
Yeah.
was taken from them or their life was destroyed, and the people that have survived around them, um, their life has changed too. So it also
Yeah.
makes sense to me that you would listen to podcasts that have to do with like just humans being humans.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
And
um
that was kind of my promise to myself when I first started, was to not focus on the people that were responsible for these crimes, but for the victims. And a lot of times, like the first story I did was the two fairies, the guy that um, Odd Cornell, who murdered his wife and stepdaughter,
mhm.
and that took place in the 20s, 1927, I think. So there's not a lot of information about those victims. It's not out there, and I researched this is my first story. This is like, the one I'm going to, launch with.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did a lot of research on it. And I really felt a connection, even though there wasn't that much information about the victims. I really felt a connection to them. And, the Odd Cornell, the murderer, he lived to be a really old man and was paroled. And, he was the oldest convict in San Quentin. They called him Old Con. And so there's a lot of information about him, but hardly any about the victims because it happened, over 100 years ago or almost 100 years ago. And I have this connection. And after I did the story, I'm like, you know what? They're buried in Glendale. And I went down and visited the graves down in Glendale. So it was a weird connection.
Yeah. You're saying that you felt this connection with them. Because I know like some of those stories that you cover are so old and there isn't a lot of information. Do you find yourself like having to keep back your speculation on some things that might have happened when you get like very little information?
Yeah, well, like just the one that I just did this week, the 1909 murder or 1909 mystery. Mm-hmm. It was where a whole family died in a fire. And at first they thought it was murder, that somebody intentionally set this fire. And, I had to constantly remind myself, this was over 100 years ago, that what they knew about fire science and fire deaths back then is nothing compared to what we know now. And, the DA at the time said there's no way an entire family could die from smoke inhalation. And it's like, yeah, that's, it happens,
Yeah.
Just how they investigate. They couldn't even tell if the stains on the mattress were blood stains,
Yeah.
Well, that's a no-brainer today. I mean, they can figure that out real fast, So, yeah, makes me appreciate what we've gotten, the accomplishments that science has made in that regard and investigating crime, and also the advancements in let's see, our criminal justice system.
Yeah.
At least, it used to be if somebody got caught wearing or riding a dead guy's horse, they're automatically guilty of his murder,
Yeah.
And, it's like, whoa, how many people did we kill? Innocent people did we kill back then,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it has come a long way. I do some of the sentences that they have though to give some of the people. It's like, oh, you killed a whole family, 5 years. You're like, what? Yeah. I mean, I think some of the sentences that they have for some crimes now are a little lenient, but it is better than it used to be for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Here's my counter to that.
Okay.
Or not.
Okay.
I did the story on Rudolfo Cadena, Diane Cadena, the Mexican mafia leader. He killed a guy when he was in his mid-teens, 14 or 15 years old. And he was tried. He went to prison as an adult. They sent this kid to prison as an adult. Was in adult prisons, and was sentenced as an adult, and look what happened to him. He was in that environment and he fell in line just like an adult prisoner,
Yeah.
I'm working on a story that's going to be released next week, and it's about a kid that murdered his mom. Mm-hmm. And there's not a lot known about it because it was handled through the juvenile justice system.
Mm-hmm.
And it was several, it was probably about 10, 15 years after Rodolfo Cadena's murder. Um, and he was sent to the California Youth Authority until he was 16 years old, and he was sentenced there till he was 21. And he's out of prison today, and he's a productive member of society.
Yeah.
So, when you compare those two cases, you wonder, okay, which is the desirable outcome? Send this 15-year-old kid to prison as an adult, and he rises up through the ranks of one of the most notorious gangs in the country, or this other kid, who did his time as a juvenile. So those are questions that we have to look at as a society.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. And
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty valid statement or valid argument. Yeah. But
Yeah.
I was just thinking of something right now as I was listening to your voice, and I know that people have said it before, but you have a voice for this type of podcast, for the true crime podcast. And honestly, the first time that I heard your podcast, all I thought of was, oh, this guy must have been a news anchor or something. He must have done something on the radio, So I was looking up your name, and I'm trying to find. I'm like, what? I'm pretty sure was he on Channel 17? Like, I don't know. Like, so I just kept looking. I'm like, was he on the AM radio? I listened to the AM radio, never heard him. So, how often are you getting that from people? From people? Yeah.
And that's what my family says, and they hear my voice all the time.
Yeah.
And so they're like, "You have a really good voice for radio."
Yeah.
Yeah, and I never knew that before doing this.
Yeah.
I never realized that I have a good voice for this type of medium, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I think that it's the type of podcast that you're doing too that really, your voice really lends to this type of podcast, the true crime.
Yeah.
Maybe you could do a money management podcast as well. I don't know, but I don't see you doing a podcast with fart jokes and things like that. But I'm sure you could do that as well. So you could surprise us all. But
You never know.
yeah, yeah. But
Yeah, and it's a thing because I have a terrible singing voice. I can't sing worth a damn. So
yeah, that's all right. But you talk just fine. So yeah, I think that sometimes in life we stumble across a second career, and I think that you have definitely done that.
yeah,
Yeah.
I hadn't even thought of it, until I decided to do a podcast, as a Notorious Bakersfield podcast, and I was like,
Yeah.
people started commenting and complimenting me on my voice. So, and people that hear me in everyday life.
Have you been noticed yet?
Oh yeah.
Really? Okay.
And I'm a walking billboard. My uniform is a Notorious Bakersfield t-shirt or hoodie.
Nice. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, you've got merch. You've got merch. I have to talk my wife into getting me one of those shirts. So I like the font you chose. I thought was good too. So
yeah, I had a graphic artist come up with that. When I first launched, I did a logo just on my own, and I'm not very good with graphic arts. And then a friend of mine's like, "Hey, I got a logo for you," and so he sent it to me. So
yeah, I actually befriended somebody from Reddit that has a podcast in England, and he does all of his own art, and he was kind enough to make the art for my podcast. Okay. And yeah, so I was very, very happy about that. So because before that, all it was just a horse, and it was confusing for people anyways because I mean the name of my podcast is a fart joke, but I have a horse and and people are like, "Is this a horse podcast?" I kept getting that from people. I'm like, "No, no." So I had to rebrand it, I guess, you know. So yeah, because not everybody gets the joke, but
Yeah.
yeah. But anyways, I was curious, what is your recording setup like? I mean, what do you use to record on? Because like myself, I just have a computer and a microphone, and I'm in a big open room. Why don't you tell everybody what you use?
I use my walk-in closet. I have a computer and a microphone, nothing fancy.
Yeah.
Uh, Samsung Q2U, which is like a cheap microphone.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to think, yeah, no, just a regular laptop
Okay.
laptop computer. I don't even have an iMac.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, you don't need that, but you were saying earlier though about the host that you use. They have something as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, I use Buzzsprout as my host. But what people don't understand about or need to understand about podcasts is that having a podcast is like having a web page. You need a host
Mm-hmm.
to host the podcast, and I chose Buzzsprout for whatever reason. I don't know, but they offer a add-on service that it cleans up your audio. It levels out all the audio and takes out background noise, which is good when you have gardeners coming by. But I usually record late at night. I'm a night owl, so
Yeah.
um, I record late at night to kind of avoid that. But then you get the barking dogs. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, the sound on your podcast is amazing. So, you said
yeah,
Buzzsprout, correct?
yeah,
Yeah.
BUZZ Sprout. Yeah,
All right. I might have to look into that. So, because I have all sorts of noise that I would love to have eliminated. So, and
and that's
some,
the thing is that you can if you have any kind of audio, you know, ability, which I don't,
mhm.
you can take those things out yourself. Um, but I don't want to learn that. I don't want to get into that technical stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's hard enough trying to do all the social media and then having
Yeah,
to edit out the things that you don't want in the episode.
yeah,
Yeah, to have to figure out levels and how much noise reduction you want to do, and yeah, it's difficult. I record on I edit on Audacity, which because it's free,
yeah.
and I don't know what half the stuff is. I kind of have an idea, I guess, because I used to mess around with GarageBand, but I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So, so I
I'm the
just
I'm the same way.
yeah, I just want the machines to do it for me. Just let,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
let them do
But
it for me. I want to purchase more equipment, but it's hard to justify buying a lot of equipment for a hobby.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Now, you don't have any kind of other than your microphone or anything like that? You don't have any other equipment?
No, I have like a monitor, a monitor that I look at kind of like as a teleprompter, but that's
Okay.
about it.
Oh, okay. All right then.
I do the research where I write a script for each episode. Um, so I'm not talking off the cuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I was gonna ask you, what is the hardest thing, like, because I'm sure when you, like we said before, when you get into podcasting, you don't really realize how hard it is. You think, okay, I talk all the time, I could go ahead and do this. And I remember the
yeah,
first time I got in front of the microphone, I'm like, what do I say? What do I do? So
exactly.
yeah, what, because it's weird to talk to nobody.
Yeah,
You're just talking to unseen people. So
yeah.
what have you found to be like the hardest part of getting into this podcasting adventure?
The part, um, well, like you said, when you just start talking and it's amazing how often you trip over your tongue.
Yes.
And then I started watching voiceover actors and newscasters and stuff like that. And it's amazing how good they are. I was telling you about the ABC News radio gal and how she, did it flawlessly. And it's like, oh crap. And they're pretty, they have time constraints. They have 25 seconds to get this, these 3 sentences in. And I'm pretty impressed by that. So that's the thing, is that you just don't realize how often especially when you're concentrating on what you're going to say and how you're going to say it and how you're going to deliver it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. For me,
Surprisingly, the one task in podcasting that it's weird, is the editing process.
really? Okay.
Okay, but here's the thing. So I recorded the episode and I'm like, oh crap, I got to edit it. And it's like, I don't want to edit, I just don't, it's just really a pain in the ass, editing. And it's, for some reason, it takes a lot to get, or, I have to motivate myself to edit it. And a lot of times that will be like the last thing,
Yeah.
And finally I start editing it. Well, once I start editing it, I love it. It's just doing it. That's what drives me crazy every time.
You're one
I
of those
go through
people.
every time. It's like, oh, I got to edit this. But then once I start doing it, it's like I enjoy it. So I
Yeah.
don't know why it's like that.
It's
No
like
idea.
exercising. It's like exercising. It's like
I don't do
I don't want to do this, and then once you do it, you're like, okay, I don't know why I was putting this off. I feel a lot better now.
Well, I don't know that.
Yeah, yeah. You're not one for exercising. I'm not one for exercising either. My body shows that, but but editing, yeah, no, I dread it, and then when I do it, I still can't stand it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was really underestimating the daunting task of editing. I didn't think that it would be as hard to edit, but when you say a lot of filler words and you have a lot of pauses in your conversations, and then when your co-host or yourself says something that might be questionable, you you're like, okay, well maybe I'm gonna cut that out, and yeah, so
Yeah.
it just makes it a pretty daunting task. So yeah, but there are some people like yourself, I know, that do actually enjoy the editing part. So
Yeah, I do. I do.
yeah, yeah, but that is not me. I was curious about the episodes that you've done and episodes that you want to do. Are there any episodes that you want to do, but you just haven't gotten around to it yet? Because I imagine that the research part is pretty hard to do. What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and it's kind of hard now. I do most of my research on archive archive newspapers, and I can access them online up to 1977.
Yeah.
Anything after 1977, I have to go to the library, to the local history room, and find them on microfilm. And the library has been closed since, or that the local history room at the library has been closed since October. So people are like telling me about stories, and it's like, well, when did it happen? Okay, well, I have to wait till it opens. The local history room is upgrading their fire suppression unit,
Oh, okay.
fire suppression system. So they've been doing that. It was supposed to be a 2-week job, and that was back in October, and
Oh
they're
my
still
gosh.
they're still closed. So hopefully they'll be open in February. But yeah, there's a lot of stories that happened in the 80s and 90s that I want to research, and
Just
yeah.
is there one particular story that you're really looking forward to covering?
Oh, there's several. I'm trying to think. what they are. I'd have to look at my notes, but yeah.
Okay. One of the things that I know you get a lot of is haunted locations, and I know that you
Yeah.
have. I've heard you talk about how you're not really a believer, right? Now, my co-host and I, we're both very conspiracy minded, and we also believe in ghosts and Bigfoot and all that stuff. So we talk about it quite a bit. And for us, like, we think you got to experience it to believe it. I was talking to one of my coworkers, and he's not a believer, but he's kind of on the fence because something had happened to him. I had asked him too. I was like, "You got any questions for Robert?" And he's like, "Well, what's the most haunted place?" And I'm like, "It's the Padre." Everybody already asks him. It's the Padre. It's BHS. It's Garza Circle. All that stuff. But what I was curious about, because he told me a story. Have you heard any stories about any cryptids here in Bakersfield?
Any what?
Cryptids. Do you know what a cryptid is?
No.
Okay, a cryptid is like Bigfoot or,
Oh,
or like
the
chupacabra.
chupacabra?
Yeah, because I'm sure people are coming to you with all sorts of crazy things, not
No,
just
I haven't.
no.
Yeah, no,
Oh,
I
okay,
haven't heard. Yeah. Is
okay.
there supposed to be one?
I don't know the story that he had told me. I thought maybe there is some sort of a cryptid. He said he saw this like 8 foot thing coming at him in the early hours of the morning in front of his house. So I'm like, maybe there is something. I don't know, but
Well, was it like a Bigfoot or?
it was almost like a shadowy type creature that was like 8 feet tall. He said at least, and
Mhm.
um, he did say that his street is very dark. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe your eyes are playing tricks on you. But he said that when it took a step towards him, it made a sound. So
Uh,
I'm like, okay, all right. Maybe he was sleep deprived. I don't know. I tried to think logically before I jumped to any conclusions. But boy,
mm.
I love a good cryptid story or haunted house or any of that stuff. So
Well,
I
I'm the same way.
yeah
Even though even though I don't believe in ghosts or whatever, if you told me, "Hey, this house is haunted, you want to spend the night?" I'd be like, "Yeah,"
yeah I'm there.
and
Yeah.
I'd be all creeped out and scared shitless. So, uh,
Yeah, exactly. I haven't taken your Halloween tour that you have because
uh,
I saw that you have it on it's on Google Podcasts. It's on there, and I was curious because I know that people were you had it for sale. Is it not for sale anymore? It's just like free or
no, it's for sale. It's on
okay?
a Yeah, it's on a different thing. I think you might be looking at the. It's not the tour.
Oh, okay.
Um, I think you might be looking at the Halloween episode.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think that's what it was
Yeah,
the Halloween one. So I don't
yeah.
know.
People are getting that. People are getting that confused. So
Okay. All right then.
first time.
Yeah, I know
Um,
you have that tour. I would like to take that. So
yeah. Even though I have had some um, experiences that you just kind of, like, what the hell was that?
hmm
You know. So yeah, I don't believe necessarily in ghosts because my logical thinking says that that's
yeah.
impossible. But then I've had experiences where it's kind of weird.
Do you care to share one of those experiences, or do you not want to
Oh, it
reveal
doesn't matter.
anything?
I had so a friend of mine was in a convalescent hospital. It was that one. It's that one on the corner of 34th and Q. I can't think of the
Okay.
name of it.
Yeah.
And I went in to visit him, and I'm standing by his bed, and I got a text, and I'm standing up. So I
hmm
look at my phone, and when I looked at my phone, I felt something rub against my leg, like a dog.
Okay.
And I looked down, and there's nothing there. I looked down specifically because I was like, what the hell is the dog doing down there?
Yeah.
And so that was that. Yeah.
okay.
That was kind of unexplainable. But it was in the summertime, the portion of the hospital that he was in, they had like fans blowing, big fans on the floor. So, I kind of explain it away by saying, well, maybe it was like a draft or something, So,
Yeah.
who knows?
I mean, you gotta try and explain things away because if you don't, then you're like, am I crazy? Yeah. That same coworker that I was talking to, he had mentioned, or he had told me something that I thought was pretty interesting. Um, do you know anything about the tunnels in Bakersfield, like downtown?
I don't. I just know that they're around. That
Okay.
people, if you go, have you seen that one at the merry-go-round or merry-go round antiques?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just went there recently, actually. Yeah,
And I did
with the
too, in
kids.
the
With the
basement.
kids. Yeah, exactly. I went with the kids, and they're like, "Can we go down there?" I'm like, "No, you can't go down there." And then I explained to them that I said, "Yeah, there's tunnels down here," and they're like, "Really?" I'm like, "What are they for?" I'm like, "Probably bootlegging and stuff." I wasn't
Yeah.
sure what it was for, and I was in a tattoo shop a few years ago, and we went into the basement, and there was there was like the door to the tunnel or something like that. So I had no idea up until that point that there was tunnels there. And I talked to my coworker, and he told me that it was somebody named well, okay. So back in the day, there was Ming, where we have our Ming Avenue, and then there was Ping, and there was Ming and Ping, and there were two businessmen, and one of them was running opium. That was Ping, and he was using the tunnels. Like they made the tunnels for the opium. So
Mm.
yeah. So I thought maybe, and I was curious too because we have Ming Avenue, and there's other uh, street names that we have, Merle Haggard and all that stuff. I know you did the Merle Haggard
Uh,
episode, but are there other street names that you're going to end up doing episodes about that you've thought about doing?
um, I haven't really thought about it. Like, who are all these, like street names are named after? I mean, I've talked to people about it. Like, who is this named after? Like
Yeah.
Evans Junior High and, Hagen, Hagen Oaks and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. So, I mean, I've talked about it, but I haven't considered doing a thing on it. But which brings me back to the Ming Avenue. I'm not sure who Ming Avenue was named after. Um, there was a county supervisor whose last name was Ming.
Okay.
So I don't know. I haven't really looked into it, so I don't know. I don't
Okay.
know who me it was. It named after the county supervisor named Ming? I don't know. And interesting thing is, he's not. As far as I know, he wasn't um, Asian.
Okay.
So I don't know. Anyways, yeah, I don't know. I don't
According
know about Ming Avenue.
according to my coworker, he said that where Ming Avenue is actually it used to be Chinatown.
No.
Yeah, so I don't know. That's eh, maybe I misunderstood what he said, but that's what he had said. So um,
No.
yeah,
No, because Ming Avenue was out in the country, back
yeah,
then.
yeah. That's what I was
Yeah.
thinking. But
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But I know that we do have a pretty big history of
Oh yeah,
Asian culture.
there's a lot of. Oh yeah, there's a lot. Right, where Channel 17 is?
Yeah, yeah.
Right there is where I don't know if they call it Chinatown, but that's where a big part of the Asian community was, right there
Okay,
where Channel 17 is. Oh, but I have heard that about the tunnels were used for opium
okay.
trade.
Yeah,
I don't know how true that is, but I've also been told that there's tunnels at East High.
yeah. Actually,
So
that was my next question. I was gonna I was gonna ask you if you've heard about the bomb shelters at BHS and East High.
Mm. I don't know about the bomb shelters. I'm sure there probably were.
Yeah.
But, there was a bomb shelter. There was a company that did them in the 50s that you could get a bomb shelter in your backyard if you wanted it. And they did like a promotional thing downtown Bakersfield, I think, like at 19th and Chester or something.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was like a big thing, somebody lived in it for like 2 or 3 days.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's really no need for them, but honestly, I would love to have a basement. It's so hot in this town.
I know.
Like to have a room that is just constantly nice and cool, I would take it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, that's summertime is the one time that I hate Bakersfield. It's
Yeah.
like every time summer rolls around, I'm like, oh, I hate this.
Yeah.
I want to get out of here.
Why do I exactly? That's the same thing I say. And I asked my wife, I said, "Hey, where do you want to go?" And then she's like, "I want to go to Vegas." I'm like, "That's the same thing. It's just as hot in Vegas." She's like, "Yeah, but there's more places to go that are air conditioned." I'm like, "Okay, whatever." Yeah.
Yeah, it was going to cost you.
Yeah, exactly. But it's funny that you say that you can't stand the heat, but you spent so much of your life in it. Yeah.
I know.
Because all those other places that you lived, I think they're hotter, aren't they?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So you came here to Bakersfield to cool off during the summertime. Yeah. Nice.
I think there's very few places you could go to or you could pick out where it's perfect weather all year round. I think the only place is San Diego.
Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect weather all year.
I'm sure there's some other cities in America that would like to boast about their perfect weather, but yeah, San Diego is pretty spot on, I think. So yeah. But I was curious how long it takes you to do your research for like one episode. How long do you usually spend on your research?
That's hard to answer because I have like 4 or 5 stories going at one time.
Okay.
And I'll like work on one for a while and then put it away and then work on another one. I'm like, oh, I need to look into that and put it away. So it's hard to gauge because I don't like do it straight through, So
yeah. And if you've got so many going at once.
Yeah. I'd say probably 10 hours on researching a story, actually reading about it and stuff.
Yeah, I just pictured you sitting in front of like the microfilm and having to go through like hundreds of articles and so many, just slaving away at all and for hours and hours, and then in my mind there's like this montage of you having to skim through books and through newspapers and and then just and then burning the midnight oil, like just all this research that you'd have to do to try to find some story about some lunatic that decided to kill a whole family.
Office family.
Yeah.
No, I do. I'll do the microfilm. I'm looking for a specific story, so to research a story, I go in for the dates, and oftentimes I'll run across a story when I'm doing that. I'm like, oh, I want to do that, so I'll like clip the article.
Oh, nice.
And save it and go back to research it later. So I do that. Surprisingly, most everything I do is on my phone.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Whenever I do the archived newspapers online, it's on my phone. And all of my scripts that I write are on my phone. And then when I'm ready to record, I email the script to myself so that I can blow it up on my monitor. So.
Gotcha. Yeah. I know. I just got a computer, not last year, but the year before. This is the first computer I've had in probably 15 years. And everything I've been doing on the phone. And,
yeah.
But, the kids have reports and things like that. And I'm like, okay, we got to get a family computer. So that's what I'm talking to you on now. But secretly, I got it because I just wanted to go ahead and do a podcast. So But don't tell the family that. They'll be upset.
Yeah, it's actually, the only time that I use my computer is when I'm recording the podcast, or,
Yeah.
that's the only time.
Yeah. Um, when you started the podcast, like what was your goal of starting it?
I had no expectations.
Okay.
I really didn't. Um, I just kind of like wanted to retell these stories. And at first I considered a blog,
Yeah.
writing a blog. And then I'm like, I'm not that good of a writer. Like, and so I'm like, hey, why not a podcast? And that's how that's how Notorious Bakersfield came to be.
Yeah. When you were you listening to podcasts before you started doing this, like to do research, or
Yeah.
were you always just like a podcast listener?
Um, I started listening to I had listened to podcasts, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
But um after I decided to do a podcast, then I started listening to podcasts about podcasting
Yeah.
and to kind of get an idea of where, what I wanted to do,
Yeah.
and how to do it.
I know that you have merch, and I
Mhm.
know that you you do like the cup of coffee thing, and you have like ways of making some revenue. And I know it's important because there's a lot of time that you invest into doing the podcast, and there are costs involved. I understand that. But
Um,
do you like where do you hope that the podcast will go, and where do you hope that it'll take you?
mm, I don't know, I just kind of have an open mind about it. It's
Okay.
kind of wherever, I'm not depending on it to eat.
Yeah.
Uh, so I do have, that I don't really want to disclose now. I do have some goals, that for the future, and it's
Hmm.
not necessarily on podcast. I'll go ahead and say
I
it.
could cut it
I'll
out.
announce
I
it.
could cut it out if you
I'll
like.
announce it. I'll announce it here.
Oh wow. Okay, sweet. All right.
I'm working. I'm working on a book,
Oh,
Notorious Bakersfield book, that will take some of these stories that I've done. And a listener that I met, she's a writer, and so she's going to take some of these scripts and turn them into a story. So,
all right. Well,
and
I'm gonna buy it as soon as you have it ready to go. I'll buy it.
we're
Yeah.
looking because there's a whole generation, older generation, that they're not into podcasts, they're not into technology,
Yeah.
but they interested in these stories. And so, anyways, that was my thing. So
That's
that's where,
fantastic. I love it. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
that's kind of, if you listen to anything about monetizing your podcast, that's what they tell you is, well, sell products that, from your podcast. Well, what are you going to have to sell,
yeah.
And it's, for me, it'll be a book. So,
Yeah.
hmm.
And I think that's probably, I mean, yeah, that book would definitely be able to reach a different audience that isn't necessarily into podcasts. So I think that's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And not like I said before, I'm not from here, but I have spent most of my life here, and I am now starting to get an appreciation for Bakersfield. And I think really it's your podcast that's kind of helping me do that.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, I appreciate you.
Hmm.
Yeah, and your podcast, and I'm glad that you decided to go ahead and make it. And I'm also happy too that you don't just do episodes of crime. I'm glad that
Sure.
you actually do other people too. I think that's
Yeah.
fantastic. I actually was thinking too, like, uh, have you thought of? I guess in a way, have you thought of franchising the Notorious Bakersfield podcast? Because I think it would be interesting to get a whole group of people that are in other little towns to
Mhm.
do a notorious Notorious Shafter, Notorious. I know you do stories from Shafter, but Notorious Fresno, Notorious San
Right.
Francisco, things like that. Have you ever thought about like franchising the
Yeah,
brand? Okay.
not necessarily franchising it. Yeah, I have thought about that, like Notorious Sacramento or Notorious Fresno or Notorious Ventura, and yeah, I would. I just don't have the time to do it, And I was going to do a Fresno one, um, but I just don't have the time to research and um, post it and stuff like that. I seriously considered doing a Fresno one because it's so similar to Bakersfield,
Yeah. Yeah.
And but the thing about Fresno, the thing about anything that you're not familiar with, like if you're reading, like I can tell you if back in the 1950s, if certain neighborhood was a decent neighborhood back then, or I'm familiar with Bakersfield.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with Fresno at all, and I think that's kind of the secret sauce too.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Um, you know, so, but yeah, I have considered that, and it's just too. And I would love for somebody to come along and say, "Hey, I want to do one on San Luis Obispo or whatever." I'd be thrilled. So,
Yeah, that's kind of what when I listen to your podcast, I get like a sense of, I guess like a sense of pride about your hometown. And I mean, even though it talks about a lot of dark things, but
right,
it's the history. We need to know the things that happened in the past.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
important. It's part of what has uh, what has created this town. And I do hope that other people from other places will listen to your podcast, even if they've never been to Bakersfield or never even heard of
right,
it.
right,
I just think that
right.
it'd be great for them to listen to your podcast and then maybe be inspired to do that, to do
Yeah.
something about their hometown that they're from. And
No, absolutely.
yeah, it'd be fantastic. I,
And it
I,
is, it's a dark history.
yeah,
It's morbid. I don't, there's a lot of, I don't get into the details. It's like, I can tell you somebody who was murdered without getting into the blood and guts. You know what
yeah,
I mean?
yeah,
Um, or that somebody was raped without, going into the awful things, that I don't have to be that descriptive of it.
yeah,
People get the idea. But it is, these things shaped our community, and they were like, people talked about them in the markets and the barber shops and at church, these stories that people today have never heard of, heard about these stories. So that's what kind of fascinates me about it, is that they were such a big thing at one time, yet not anymore.
yeah,
I just think we're only, our memories, or our somebody has remembered only like two or three generations. After that, you know nobody remembers us anymore.
yeah,
I think that's kind of fascinating.
yeah. That's why I think history is so important, like to continue to tell the stories so
Mhm.
we don't forget the people from the past and don't
Mhm.
forget our past as a town and as a
Yeah.
people. And yeah, we
Well,
were
even like the even like our national history,
hmm
people flock to Ford's Theater and go across the Peterson House where Abraham Lincoln died. He was shot
yeah,
in Ford's Theater and was carried over to the Peterson's house. And it's a big, huge tourist attraction. And it's morbid, but it's our history.
yeah,
And it's the same thing. It's the same thing with our local history. Just because it's not on a national level, it's part of our history.
yeah. I think also too, a lot of times when people live in a town, they don't, like when they grow up in a town, they really don't know what is going on a lot of times. Like I grew up
Yeah.
I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I never really went to San Francisco that much.
Mm-hmm.
I had all of this history and all of this culture at my fingertips, and of course my parents were the ones driving, but still we had all of this there, and we never really experienced it, and I never bothered to know about the history of the little towns that I grew up in, and
Yeah.
I think it is important to just know about the place that you're in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
Figure out why it's called Ming Avenue.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, try to figure all that out. So, yeah, but
Yeah.
I think we could go ahead and wrap this up. And if you'd like to go ahead and let everybody know how they could go ahead and contact you and where they could go ahead and listen to you.
You can Notorious Bakersfield is on all the different podcast sites: Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. You can go to notoriousbakersfield.com, listen to it there. That's where my merchandise is too. And I release a new episode every week, every Tuesday. And yeah, that's the dirt.
All right. All right. Yeah. And
You didn't have any more questions?
I do what?
You didn't have any more questions?
I mean, I've constantly got questions, to be honest with you. Like they're always, but they come and they go. And those are the things that I wanted to talk about that I could think of off the top of my head. Yeah, and for me, I kind of wanted to be more. I wanted this to be more about like who you are as a person than like particular episodes. To me, I find that fascinating. Like people who decide to go ahead and do a podcast. Like, why is it that they want to do a podcast, and what it was that kind of like drives them to do it, and I think that's pretty much that's where I'm coming from, because I anybody that's doing a podcast, I feel like it's a kindred spirit. Somebody who has something that they want to say, and they want to get it out there to other people.
Yeah. Now, when did you move to Bakersfield?
I moved to Bakersfield in '93.
Okay.
My dad was working for Long's Drugs, up in Walnut Creek, and they offered him a position. He was in like the IT, and they said, well, you can either go to Bakersfield, which I had never heard of before, or you can go to East LA. So I've lived in Bakersfield ever since. That was a good choice.
You worked for Long's Drugs?
Yeah, he worked for Long's Drugs. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you remember Long's Drugs?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But
I worked for Albertsons, so.
Oh, did you? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's
and 93. I worked at the store on Mount Vernon.
Okay.
And there's Long's Drugs next door.
Yeah.
But didn't Long's Drugs, didn't they merge with Payless Drugs?
No,
There's been so many mergers.
No, Long's never merged with them. What happened was CVS bought them out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
CVS bought who out?
Bought out Long's.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now every place that you see a CVS that's not new, if it's like an older looking CVS, that was a Long's.
Okay.
So
yeah.
And that's when my dad was forced to retire. So yeah, they forced him out. But yeah, I've been in Bakersfield since '93. But it was interesting.
Seen Bakersfield grow.
Yeah, and actually, too, you know what? That was a question I was going to ask you. See, yeah, we're talking and it's bringing up stuff. But
go ahead.
You've been, if you don't mind me asking, when were you born?
1966.
66. Okay.
Yeah.
So in that time, because I am fascinated with the growth of this town, what do you like? How much growth have you seen, and what really stands out to you the most?
Um, well, as I said, my parents, my family moved away when I
Yeah.
was a kid.
Yeah.
We came back to Bakersfield, or I came back in 84,
Okay.
83,
Oh wow.
84. So that's kind of the Bakersfield I remember.
Okay.
Um, and I remember at the time I had a friend, he got an apartment on Ming Avenue past Ash. And um, that was out in the boonies.
Yeah.
And I thought, why would anybody live out here? But yeah, that was back, when anything past Ash was just out, way out, So, and now it's kind of in the middle of town.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, I was like when they talk about Southwest Bakersfield. Oh, it's Southwest Bakersfield, and they it's like South H and things like.
Uh,
And I'm like, what? That's not Southwest. You're gonna have to change your definition of
yeah,
what Southwest is now. That's it's a pretty
yeah,
big area, but
yeah. And
yeah,
before the freeways, before '99, I think people considered, yeah. Now, and then they built the '99, and so people, I think, consider anything east of '99, um, or yeah, east of '99, Southwest Bakersfield. You know what I'm saying? Um, at least that's kind of how I consider it. I like the Valley Plaza at one time was probably considered Southwest Bakersfield, but now with the freeway, I mean, the freeway was there when the Valley Plaza was built,
yeah,
but you know what I'm saying? That it's
yeah,
kind of redrawn it. So,
yeah. I in the time that I've been here, the amount of growth has been insane to me.
oh yeah,
I've never been I've never lived in a place where it's been like this. So
yeah.
it is pretty fascinating. I mean, we're I think we're close to 1 million people in Bakersfield. I could have been reading
Actually,
it
well,
wrong, but
no, Kern County is almost 1 million.
okay, that's what I was reading then. Okay,
I
all
think
right,
Bakersfield is close to 400,000. So,
okay. Still, that's a lot of people, and I don't think it was that many people when I got here. So I mean, it's in the
and
housing prices as well. So
yeah, and heck, eventually Bakersfield and Shafter are going to grow together.
I have
I
a
won't.
yeah, I have a
I drove.
coworker that lives in Shafter, and I keep telling her that, and she's like, "No, no, that's not going to happen. I don't want to be part of Bakersfield." What were you
Yeah,
going to say? I'm
Shafter will
sorry.
eventually. Shafter will be eventually like almost like Oildale.
Exactly. Yes, that's what I was trying to tell her, and she's in denial. But I said, "Not in your lifetime. Don't worry about it." So, because they have those houses out there on Seventh Standard, and that's
Hmm.
considered Shafter. So
Yeah,
it's happening. They're doing it. They're gonna try,
yeah.
they're gonna try and merge.
And
But
Shafter's growing just as much as Bakersfield is.
yeah, I mean it
Yeah,
happens. LA was like that. All of these places start out small
yeah,
and end up becoming some big giant
yeah,
cluster of people. And that's why I think it's so important that we talk about history. We talk about the past and talk about the history that it went on here. That's why I end up every time I listen to your podcast and it goes way back. I try to like close my eyes and envision what life was like in
yeah.
Bakersfield at that time. It's difficult,
Yeah.
but I try to do it.
That's how I was with just this last one. I don't know if you listened to it,
Yeah,
the
I did. Yeah.
1909 Ministry, and it's like I had to like visualize it. Cars were rare. I mean, they were around. The Model T came out that year, so people that had cars were rich.
Hmm.
Um, the Model T made it possible for people to buy cars that couldn't get them before.
Yeah.
So, anyways, there are more dirt roads than there were paved roads, and it was out on South Union. Sorry, yeah, South Union. And it's like, was South Union even paved then?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I was watching a thing on YouTube about California City. Do you know anything about that place?
It was supposed to be. It was going to be like a resort town, kind of like a Palm Springs, is what they wanted it to be,
Yeah.
and it just kind of dried up.
Well, yeah, that's exactly what happened. Like they did start getting people to move in, but
Mhm.
all of that water, they just didn't have enough water. And
Yeah, yeah,
so I guess now they're trying to turn it into like a weed haven. Um,
yeah,
yeah, which I'm like, okay, but that needs water too. And that was the
yeah,
issue that you had before. So I don't know what you're planning on doing. But
yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
but I did find it interesting that they already have all the roads like laid out. So if you look at a
Hmm.
satellite view, you see all the roads laid out for California City, and
Hmm.
uh, and then just no houses, and they're not
Yeah,
paved; they're just all dirt.
yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, the guy who decided he wanted to start a city there, he guessed wrong. So he, but I thought to myself, he should have just picked Bakersfield. It already started. He should have just started to be on the outskirts of Bakersfield, and then it would have been all right. Like he could have chose like Lamont or Arvin
Yeah.
or something like that. He chose wrong. He chose wrong. But I think that's about it. So I do
Take.
appreciate you coming on here. I really do
Absolutely,
appreciate
Doc.
it a lot. And like I
Thanks
said,
for
this is
inviting me.
oh well. I was surprised you wanted to hop on the
Oh,
podcast. Did you get a chance? Did you listen to any of my episodes or our
oh,
episode?
yeah, it's been a while. Yeah.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Back when we first, um, back when you first messaged me,
Okay.
in December, I think it was, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was December, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And it didn't scare you
All
off,
right.
huh?
No, no.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah. I really do appreciate it because me and my co-hosts, like we wanted to do um, a podcast called Podcast,
Uh,
where we interview other podcasters.
uh,
Um, just basically because we, we like podcasting,
uh,
and we felt like there was no, like, I know you listen to podcasts about podcasting,
uh,
but I feel like there's not a lot of podcasts that talk to other podcasters and why they got into the whole
yeah.
thing. I do know that people will like say, especially in the conspiracy stuff, right? They'll have other conspiracy podcasts on, and
Mhm.
that's kind of where I came up with the idea was like, just okay, yeah, you got other conspiracy, but why not just do a podcast about people doing podcasts and talk to
Yeah,
everybody all over, and
yeah,
and I just like to get to know people and see what they're all about. So I
yeah,
really do appreciate this, and
yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if our audiences will will mix, but I hope that and actually a lot of our listeners are either from England or from LA. So
Okay.
so hopefully, I mean, the people in LA have definitely heard of Bakersfield.
Right, right,
Yeah,
right.
so hopefully some people will hear it and hear this and
Yeah,
decide to
yeah.
to give it a listen because I really think
I
that.
have a whole,
What was
I
that?
have a whole audience in Australia.
Oh,
That's
do you?
the, yeah, that's the one country outside of the United States where has the biggest audience is Australia.
Wow. All right.
Yeah.
I had
Yeah.
somebody listen once in Tasmania.
Oh,
Yeah, but I think that they thought that it was a horse podcast. So, like I said before, there was some confusion. So,
yeah.
yeah, and then I got some people from Texas, and I think that was the same issue. So, uh,
All right.
all right, yeah, thank you, and just
Appreciate it.
yeah, I appreciate it. I really do. So I am a big fan of yours.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and
We'll have to meet for a coffee or something sometime.
yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah, we could go to Spencer's or something.
I go to Molly J's all the time. So.
Oh, do you? Okay. You know which place I really like?